In the far reaches of the galaxy, there was a race known as the Zorath. The Zorath were an ancient species, proud of their long history of domination over countless worlds. They had conquered many civilizations, each one falling to their might and technology. To the Zorath, the galaxy was their kingdom, and they ruled it with an iron fist. They saw no reason to fear any species until they encountered Earth. The humans of Earth had always been a resilient people. They had fought wars, survived disasters, and thrived in ways that many other species could not understand. Yet, in the eyes of the Zorath, humans were nothing more than a primitive race, one not worth their attention. That was their first mistake. The Zorath had been planning for years. Their fleet was vast, capable of wiping out entire planets with ease. And Earth, despite its beauty and wealth of resources, seemed like an easy target. The Zorath, thinking Earth was just another peaceful, defenseless world, made their move. The invasion began without warning. One moment, Earth's skies were clear, the air fresh, and the world in a state of quiet normalcy. The next moment, they were filled with the thundering roar of alien warships. The Zorath descended from the stars, their fleet massive and unyielding. Their ships were designed for destruction, capable of wiping out entire cities with a single strike. Their soldiers, advanced and ruthless, landed on Earth with one clear mission: to destroy. Humanity fought back, but it was a struggle against an enemy they couldn't comprehend. The Zorath were more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. They had weapons that could disintegrate entire battalions of soldiers in the blink of an eye. Cities were leveled in mere hours. The death toll grew higher with each passing minute. Humans, despite their bravery, were overwhelmed by the sheer might of the Zorath. Yet, in the chaos, something unexpected happened. While many of Earth's population fell to the brutal assault, others, hidden in the shadows of cities and deep in underground bunkers, began to rally. They were not soldiers or generals, but survivors. Ordinary people who had never fought, before now found themselves banding together. Families united, communities formed, and human ingenuity began to shine. In the face of utter destruction, humanity did what it did best: adapt. A small resistance group formed, led by a man named James Carter. Carter had been a soldier before, but he had left the military years ago, believing in peace. He had never imagined he would be forced back into a war like this. But when the Zorath attacked, something inside him ignited. He couldn't sit idly by while his world burned. He couldn't let his people be erased from existence. As Carter gathered those who had survived, a plan began to take shape. The humans had nothing like the Zorath's advanced weapons, but they had something the Zorath didn't: determination. They had the will to fight, to survive, and to protect their world. They were not going to let themselves be destroyed without a fight. The Zorath were ruthless in their invasion. They captured entire cities, enslaved human survivors, and razed everything they could. But as the resistance grew, so did their courage. The human soldiers, now united under Carter's leadership, struck back with everything they had. They used the terrain of Earth to their advantage, setting traps and ambushes. They weren't fighting a conventional war. They were fighting for their very survival. They knew this was no ordinary battle. This was the fight of their lives. For the first time, the Zorath began to experience something they had never faced before: a true challenge. The humans, though vastly outnumbered and outgunned, fought with a desperation that no one could have predicted. Their survival instincts kicked in. They didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought for their families, their homes, and their very existence. As the resistance fought back, they uncovered something even more terrifying. Earth had always been a world of mystery. It was filled with ancient ruins, forgotten technologies, and long-lost knowledge. Humanity had always lived unaware of the true power that lay dormant within their planet. But now, as they scoured their world for weapons and resources, they stumbled upon something that would change everything. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, hidden in the ruins of an ancient civilization, the Resistance discovered a set of machines unlike anything they had ever seen. These machines were old, ancient even, but they were powerful. They seemed to hum with a strange energy, as though they had been waiting for something, or someone, to awaken them. James Carter, along with his closest allies, entered the depths of the Earth to examine these machines. They quickly realized that these machines were not just weapons. They were the key to unlocking a power that could turn the tide of the war. The ancient civilization that had once lived on Earth had known of the coming storm, and they had left behind this technology as a safeguard. But it had been forgotten, buried under centuries of time. The more they studied the machines, the more they realized the terrible truth. The Zorath had not just attacked a peaceful world. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The power humanity possessed was not just technological, it was something deeper, something primal. It was the power of survival, of vengeance, and of unyielding determination. As the humans continued to study the ancient machines, they began to understand how to harness the power within them. The machines responded to the human will, adapting to their commands and growing stronger with each passing day. With these machines, humanity could not only fight back, they could win. But the Zorath had already made their move. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were about to learn that their arrogance would be their downfall. They had believed they could wipe out Earth with ease, but they had awakened a force far more powerful than they had ever imagined. The humans were no longer just a victimized species. They were becoming something more, something the galaxy had never seen before. As the Resistance gathered its strength and prepared for the final confrontation, James Carter stood before his people. He looked out at the faces of those who had fought and bled for their world. They were tired, battered, but unbroken. And now, with the power of Earth's ancient machines at their command, they were ready. The Zorath had made a grave mistake. They had thought they could erase humanity without consequence. They had believed that Earth was just another peaceful world, ripe for the taking. But they had awakened a monster. And that monster would stop at nothing until it had reclaimed what was rightfully its own. The Zorath had thought Earth's resistance was just a flicker in the dark, a spark that would quickly die out under their overwhelming power. But they were wrong. The human survivors, armed with nothing but their grit, determination, and the strange ancient machines they had uncovered, were beginning to turn the tide. James Carter, now a leader of the human forces, stood at the front of a small command center. It was nothing like the grand control rooms of the Zorath's warships, but it was enough. Maps of Earth, the locations of Zorath strongholds, and data from the new machines they had unlocked filled the walls of the room. There was a fire in his eyes, a spark of hope that hadn't been there before. It was the same spark that had driven humans to fight back against countless threats throughout their history. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Carter said, his voice steady and filled with determination. "We're fighting for revenge, for justice, for every person who's been taken from us." Around him, the faces of his fellow commanders reflected the same resolve. Earth had been broken, its cities reduced to rubble, but they were not broken. They had risen from the ashes, stronger and more united than ever before. Now, armed with the ancient technology they had unearthed, they were ready to strike back. The machines they had found were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. They weren't just weapons, they were amplifiers of human willpower. At first, the scientists who studied them couldn't understand how they worked. The technology was far beyond anything humanity had created. But after weeks of experimentation, They realized the machines responded to the emotions and intentions of the humans who operated them. James Carter and his commanders, along with a handful of Earth's most brilliant minds, learned how to interface with the machines. They didn't just give orders, they connected with the machines on a deeper level. The more determined they became, the more powerful the machines became in return. The Zorath had believed humanity was weak and defenseless. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. With the machines now in their control, Earth's remaining, forces began to gather for their first real counterattack. The plan was simple: take back what was theirs, starting with the Zorath's strongholds on Earth. These strongholds were heavily guarded, but they weren't invincible. The human resistance had learned from the Zorath's own mistakes. They had studied their enemies' tactics, their weaknesses, and now they were ready to exploit them. The first assault came on a cold, clear night. The Zorath stronghold in the heart of what used to be New York City was a towering fortress, heavily fortified with energy shields and weapons that could level a building with a single shot. But the human forces, now operating the ancient machines, had a surprise of their own. The machines allowed them to bypass the Zorath's energy shields and strike directly at their defenses. The human soldiers, led by Carter and his commanders, moved in silently. They didn't need to speak. They had become a well-oiled machine, working in perfect unison. Every action, every movement was precise. The Zorath's forces, once so confident in their superiority, were caught off guard. The first wave of attack was led by a team of human engineers who had worked tirelessly to modify the ancient machines into battle tools. These machines, capable of manipulating the very fabric of reality, tore through the Zorath's defenses with ease. Walls of energy were shattered, shielded doors crumpled like paper. Nothing the Zorath had prepared could stop them. Inside the stronghold, the Zorath commanders scrambled to mount a defense, but it was too late. The human forces moved quickly, clearing every room, taking down every Zorath soldier they encountered. With every battle won, the resistance grew stronger, more confident. The Zorath began to realize that they had underestimated humanity's resolve. Back at the human base, Carter watched the progress unfold on a large screen. Each victory, each piece of Earth reclaimed, was a reminder of why they fought. For every life lost, for every city destroyed, for every innocent person taken from them, humanity would not forget. Carter's mind raced with thoughts of the future. The Zorath were still strong, their fleet still vast. But this victory was only the beginning. With each machine they used, each piece of ancient technology they unlocked, humanity was becoming a force that no one could ignore. The galaxy had thought humanity was weak, an unremarkable species, easy to conquer. But they had awakened a power that no one, not even the Zorath, could defeat. The Zorath, now realizing their mistake, scrambled to regroup. They called for reinforcements from other planets, desperate to crush the human resistance before it could gain any more strength. They had no idea what they were about to face. Carter called a meeting with his commanders, gathering them around a table in the command center. He could see the exhaustion in their eyes, the toll that the war had taken on them. But there was no time for rest. The Zorath wouldn't stop until they had destroyed everything. "We have to hit them hard and fast," Carter said, his voice cold with determination. "We have to make sure they know that Earth is no longer a target. It's a place where civilizations come to die if they dare threaten us." The plan was set. The human resistance would strike at the heart of the Zorath's empire. They would no longer be confined to Earth. They would take the fight to the stars. The next phase of the plan involved more than just humanity's best fighters. It was a combined effort. The human engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked together, crafting weapons, ships, and strategies that would make them an unstoppable force. With the machines they had found, they began to build ships capable of traveling faster than anything the Zorath had ever seen. The Zorath were not prepared for this. They had assumed the humans would be crushed under their might, but now they were facing a united force with weapons and technology far beyond their expectations. Humanity was no longer a species on the defensive. They were a force capable of taking down entire empires. The war was just beginning, but the Zorath's time was running out. And as Carter and his forces prepared to launch their next attack, they knew that this would be the turning point. The galaxy would soon know that humanity was not to be trifled with. They had awakened a monster, and now the Zorath were going to pay the price. The war between humanity and the Zorath had reached a tipping point. The Zorath, once so sure of their superiority, now found themselves scrambling to contain the power of a species they had once thought weak. Humanity, with its newfound strength, and the ancient machines had begun to push the invaders back, reclaiming their cities and even their hope. James Carter stood in the command center of the Human Resistance's flagship, a ship that was once an ancient relic but had been re-engineered. With the knowledge and technology they had uncovered, the ship was now a symbol of humanity's resilience, a weapon and a beacon of their determination. From the bridge, Carter could see the stars stretching out before them, cold and distant, but now within reach. The war was no longer just about Earth. It was about the survival of humanity as a whole. "We've taken back Earth," Carter said to his commanders, his voice filled with both pride and determination. "But this war is far from over. The Zorath won't stop until they've wiped us out entirely. It's time we take the fight to them." The Zorath had been calling for reinforcements from across the galaxy. Their fleet was vast, but humanity had something they didn't: the will to survive. The ancient machines had become more than just weapons. They had become the key to understanding the true power humanity held. With each passing day, the human forces grew stronger, more capable, and more dangerous. The machines they had unlocked had the ability to manipulate the very fabric of space itself, and now, with this power, they were ready to strike. Carter turned to his fleet of human warships, each one a testament to their ingenuity and courage. These ships were no longer just vehicles of war. They were symbols of a united humanity, unwilling to bow to anyone. The Zorath had made a grave mistake when they attacked Earth. They had awakened a force that could not be contained, a force that would stop at nothing to defend their home and their future. "We launch at dawn," Carter ordered. "All ships are to prepare for full deployment. Our target is the Zorath's primary command station on their home planet." The Zorath homeworld, a place once thought to be impenetrable, was now humanity's next goal. Carter knew the risks. The Zorath's defenses would be formidable, but humanity had learned to fight in ways the Zorath could not anticipate. They had adapted, becoming a force capable of turning the tide of war. Now, they would make the Zorath feel the full force of their vengeance. As the fleet prepared for the journey, Carter took a moment to reflect. It had been months since the Zorath first attacked, and in that time, humanity had gone from a species on the brink of extinction to a force that could challenge the very heart of the Zorath Empire. It was hard to believe how far they had come, but the faces of those who had fought beside him reminded him of what was at stake. The war was not just about vengeance. It was about survival, the survival of their way of life, their home, and their future. The journey to the Zorath homeworld was long, but it wasn't without its dangers. The Zorath had fortified their planet, with defenses stronger than any the humans had faced before. But the human fleet, now enhanced by the ancient machines, moved with purpose. Every ship was a weapon. Every soldier was a warrior. The human spirit burned bright, and with every light year they traveled, they were closer to making the Zorath pay for what they had done. When they arrived in orbit around the Zorath homeworld, the scale of the enemy's defenses became clear. The planet was surrounded by a thick shield, unlike anything the humans had encountered before. But the humans were not deterred. They had learned how to bypass shields with the ancient technology. They had uncovered The machines responded to the determination of the humans, amplifying their strength and unlocking their hidden potential. "Prepare for the first strike," Carter commanded. The human ships, now equipped with the powerful energy weapons developed, using the ancient machines, fired their first salvo. The energy blasts tore through the Zorath's outer defense shields like paper, creating massive explosions in the cold vacuum of space. The Zorath were unprepared for the ferocity of the attack, and their ships scrambled to defend themselves. But it was too late. Humanity had already found their weakness. As the human fleet advanced, they focused their fire on the Zorath command station, a massive fortress built into the planet's surface. The Zorath tried to retaliate, launching their own counterattacks. But they were outmatched. The humans had studied their tactics, their weaknesses, and now they were exploiting them. The battle raged for hours, but the humans were relentless. They had tasted victory, and they were not about to let it slip away. With each passing moment, the Zorath's defenses crumbled. The Zorath had no idea what they were up against. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Carter watched as their forces pushed deeper into the Zorath's stronghold, each victory pushing them closer to their goal. He knew that they had no choice but to keep moving forward. The Zorath had already taken so much from them, and they would not stop until the Zorath were no longer a threat. "This is just the beginning," Carter muttered to himself as the battle continued. "We've fought for Earth, and now we fight for the entire galaxy." With a final push, the human fleet made their way to the heart of the Zorath command station. The machines they had discovered amplified their attacks, and soon the Zorath's command center was in ruins. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion began, humanity had dealt a crushing blow to the Zorath. They had proven that they were no longer the prey. They were the predators. As the battle came to an end, Carter stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the wreckage of the Zorath command station. His heart raced with both relief and anticipation. The Zorath had been brought to their knees, but the war was far from won. There would be more battles, more challenges ahead. But humanity had already shown what they were capable of. The victory on the Zorath homeworld was a turning point in the war. Humanity had struck a decisive blow against their invaders, but the battle was far from over. The Zorath, reeling from their losses, quickly realized the scale of their mistake. They had thought Earth would be an easy conquest, but now they were facing a species capable of pushing back, a species whose resilience and unity had proven to be far stronger than they could have imagined. James Carter stood in the command center of the human flagship, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. His fleet had just dealt a devastating blow to the Zorath's command center, but the war was far from won. The Zorath would not be so easily defeated. They would regroup, call for reinforcements, and retaliate. The question was, could humanity continue to fight back? The human fleet had sustained damage during the battle, but the losses were minimal compared to the damage the Zorath had suffered. Carter felt a surge of pride, knowing that the humans were beginning to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. But he also knew that this victory, while significant, was only one chapter in a much larger story. There were still countless other worlds in the galaxy, many of them under the rule of the Zorath, that would need to be freed. "We've taken the first step," Carter said, his voice steady. "But this isn't the end. The Zorath will come back stronger. We need to be ready." His commanders nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The Zorath may have underestimated humanity in the past, but they would no longer make that mistake. The next stage of the war was already beginning, and humanity had to be prepared. As the human fleet made its way back to Earth to regroup, the news of their victory spread across the galaxy. The galaxy's other races, many of which had been under the heel of the Zorath, began to take notice. Some of them had feared the Zorath's might and were reluctant to speak out against their oppressors. Others, however, saw the Zorath as a tool of their own ambitions, and now they wondered if they had miscalculated. A council meeting was held among the representatives of several alien civilizations. Many of these species had been wary of humanity from the start, but as they looked at the battle reports and heard the stories of the human victory, they began to ask themselves a difficult question. Could they afford to stand by and let the Zorath fall? The galaxy was in turmoil. The balance of power was shifting, and the Zorath's grip on many worlds was weakening. The Zorath had built an empire through fear, but now they were facing a force that would not be cowed. Humanity had awoken a new age, one where no species, not even the Zorath, could rule unchecked. But there was also another side to the story. Some of the galaxy's other races, those who had been allies of the Zorath or who feared the spread of humanity's power, began to view humanity as a new threat. They saw the humans not as liberators, but as another empire rising to challenge the status quo. The question was no longer just about the Zorath. It was about what humanity would do with its newfound strength. Carter and his fleet were not unaware of the tension brewing in the galaxy. He had received messages from several of the galactic leaders, some offering alliances, others expressing concern. Earth's victory was being watched closely, and Carter knew that the next steps would be crucial in determining the future of the galaxy. "We're not here to conquer," Carter said to his commanders as they gathered around him in the command center. "We're here to stop the Zorath from destroying everything we hold dear. But if we make the wrong move now, we could turn the galaxy against us. We need to be careful." The human fleet had grown more powerful with each battle. The ancient machines had allowed them to harness incredible power, but they were not the only weapon in humanity's arsenal. The human ingenuity that had built Earth's greatest cities and technologies now fueled their war effort. Every ship was a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when pushed to its limits. But as Carter prepared for the next phase of the war, he knew that the galaxy was not just watching. They were weighing their options. Some races saw the rise of humanity as an opportunity. They saw an ally who could help them overthrow their Zorath overlords. But others feared that humanity's power would tip the balance of the galaxy and threaten their own futures. The galaxy was at a crossroads. The Zorath's empire was in decline, but what would come next? Would humanity, having tasted victory, seek to carve out its own empire, or would it continue its mission to free the galaxy from tyranny? One of the key decisions Carter would have to make was how to approach these other races. There were many who had suffered under the Zorath's rule, and some of them had been part of the resistance against the Zorath even before humanity entered the fight. These races had their own histories, their own cultures, and their own grievances. The question was whether humanity would stand alone in its fight, or whether it would open the door for alliances, even with those who had been once enemies of Earth. As Carter pondered these questions, he received a message from one of the most unexpected sources, the leader of the Varan, an alien species known for their cunning and strategic minds. The Varan had once been enemies of Earth, but now, with the Zorath weakened, they saw the opportunity for a new relationship. Humanity. The Varan leader's voice crackled through the communication channel. "You have proven yourselves more than capable in battle. The Zorath underestimated you, and now we see the potential for cooperation. We would like to discuss an alliance." Carter's eyes narrowed. This was the moment of truth. The Varan were skilled diplomats, but they were also known for their ruthlessness. He couldn't afford to trust them without caution. "We're willing to talk," Carter replied carefully. "But know this. The Zorath are not the only threat in the galaxy. If you seek an alliance, it must be based on mutual respect, not exploitation." The Varan leader chuckled. "Of course, we would never seek to exploit humanity, but the Zorath are no longer our only concern. It seems the galaxy has new rulers rising, ones that will shape the future for all of us." Carter's mind raced. The galaxy was shifting, and humanity was at the center of it. They had taken the first steps toward freedom, but the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. Would they become the galaxy's new champions, or would they fall into the same patterns of domination that had caused so much suffering in the past? As the message ended, Carter turned to his commanders. The war with the Zorath is only the beginning. We must be prepared for what comes next. The galaxy is watching us, and we cannot afford to make the wrong move. The war against the Zorath was far from over, but humanity had proven itself. With each battle they won, the Zorath's empire grew weaker, and humanity's strength grew stronger. Yet as they neared the final stages of the conflict, another challenge loomed on the horizon. The galaxy was watching, and the decisions made now would shape the future of all civilizations. James Carter stood on the bridge of the human flagship, gazing at the stars. The victory against the Zorath had been a turning point, but now humanity faced a choice. The Zorath had been their first enemy, but as the dust of war settled, new questions arose. What would happen next? Would humanity be a force for peace, or a new empire that would conquer all in its path? The alien races, once ruled by the Zorath, were now looking to humanity for guidance. Some saw the humans as liberators, grateful for their intervention, while others feared the rise of yet another power-hungry civilization. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of it all. Carter, we've received messages from the Varan and several other species, said Sarah Bennett, one of his top commanders. They're eager to discuss alliances, but their intentions are unclear. Some of them want cooperation, but others, they have their own plans. Carter rubbed his temples, deep in thought. He had known that this moment would come. The galaxy had been ruled by the Zorath for so long that the sudden shift in power had left everyone uncertain. Humanity had proven it could defeat a galactic empire, but now it had to prove it could lead without becoming another empire itself. We can't repeat the mistakes of the past, Carter said, his voice steady. We need to be careful about who we ally with. If we're going to build a better future, we have to ensure that humanity doesn't fall into the same traps that the Zorath did. The room was silent as everyone considered his words. Carter's mind raced with the possibilities. They had the power to shape the galaxy, but with power came responsibility. Humanity's victory over the Zorath was not just a military triumph, it was a chance to build something better. The question was, could they do it without falling into the same patterns of domination and conquest that had marked the rise of every other empire? The Zorath, once so sure of their dominance, had been brought low by humanity's determination. Now the galaxy was ripe for change, but Carter wasn't sure what that change should look like. Should they help the other races rebuild, creating a new order based on mutual respect and cooperation, or should they strike out on their own, securing humanity's place at the top of the galaxy? We need to send a message, Carter said finally. The Zorath believed that power was everything. They thought they could control the galaxy with fear and force. But we've shown that strength alone isn't enough. We need to build trust. We need to lead by example. He turned to his commanders. Prepare the fleet for a diplomatic mission. We'll send a message to the galaxy that humanity isn't here to rule. We're here to help. It's time to rebuild. The decision was made. Carter knew that this would not be an easy task. Many of the alien species had suffered under the Zorath's rule, and the wounds they carried were deep. It would take time to rebuild the relationships that had been broken by centuries of conquest. But it was the right thing to do. The human fleet, now stronger and more united than ever, set course for the Galactic Council. The Zorath's former allies, now leaderless and uncertain, were waiting to hear what humanity had to say. Would they see Earth as a potential ally, or would they see it as another conqueror? As the fleet entered the heart of the galaxy, Carter couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. The future of the galaxy rested in their hands. He knew that the decisions made now would echo through the stars for centuries to come. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of alien races, all eager to hear what humanity had to say. The room was tense, the air thick with uncertainty. The once mighty Zorath Empire had crumbled, and now the galaxy was waiting to see if humanity would become the new rulers or the new leaders. Carter and his commanders entered the chamber, standing before the council of alien leaders. He felt the eyes of the galaxy upon him, and for a moment he wondered if they would see humanity as their saviors or their new oppressors. "We stand here today not as conquerors but as survivors," Carter began, his voice calm but firm. "Humanity has fought for its survival, and we have overcome the greatest threat our world has ever known. But we do not seek to rule. We seek to build a future where all civilizations can thrive." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The Zorath used fear and domination to control the galaxy. We refuse to follow that path. We want to help rebuild, to create a future where power is not measured by conquest, but by cooperation." The room was silent as Carter spoke, the representatives of the various species listening closely. Some were skeptical, others hopeful. It was clear that humanity's message had struck a chord, but the galaxy was still uncertain. One by one, the representatives began to speak, each with their own thoughts on humanity's rise. Some spoke of fear, worried that humanity's power would lead to another empire. Others spoke of hope, seeing the humans as a force for positive change. The debate was heated, but in the end, it was clear that humanity had earned the chance to lead. "We are willing to extend an olive branch," Carter continued. "But know this: we will not tolerate oppression. We will not stand by while any race seeks to control others. Our strength is not in our weapons, but in our will to protect and preserve." The council room fell silent once more. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of humanity, and now it would have to decide whether to accept their offer of cooperation. In the end, the decision was made. The Galactic Council would form an alliance with humanity, and together they would work to rebuild the galaxy in the aftermath of the Zorath's fall. The road ahead would not be easy, but humanity had proven that it could rise above the chaos and lead with honor. As Carter left the chamber, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. The war was over, but the real work had only just begun. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and come out victorious. Now, they would prove that they were capable of leading the galaxy, not through domination but through cooperation and mutual respect.